What's up guys, and welcome back to Byte Logic. Today I'm going to show you a quick to-do list I made that's going to demonstrate all of the methods we learned in our first video series. So hopefully you're willing to stick around, and without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alrighty, so let's get started. I'm not going to spend too much time on the start function and the main function, simply because we did cover that in a previous video, so I'll link that down in the description below, but I will give them a quick kind of like a quick description. Basically, all the start function does is it prompts the user to press enter, and it lets them know we're starting the program. And the main function is kind of like the command center for the rest of our code. You see here I'm calling all of my functions from the command center, and at the end of all this, I'm going to ask the user if they want to do it again. You'll see why that's useful here in a second. So moving on, let's get straight into process one. Actually, first, you know what? I'm going to show you what this looks like so it'll help you follow along a little better. So, this is our start function right here, starting program. And it's just going to ask me to press enter. I'm going to start. I'm going to say, how many items do you want on your list? Let's say I'm going to make 3. Okay. And this is my quick little explanation for how we're going to run it. So I want them to import, or I'm sorry, I want them to input. So the user needs to input the items that they need to do for the day in order of importance. So if something is really important like homework, put that in first. Eating is kind of important, kind of not. And TV is definitely not important. So for my first thing, I'm going to say, I'll say get up. My second thing will be Python, of course. And then my last thing will be go bed. Right? So this is my to-do list for today. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to export this list to a text file? And I'm going to say no, because I forgot to add something. This right here, let me scroll up here. This is the importance of our mainline logic. It's giving me another chance without having to close this terminal and relaunch it. I can just say, yeah, I want to add one more thing. Turns out I was missing something in my list, so I'm going to say get up, be awesome, because that's important, then do Python, then go bed. Okay, that looks like a good list, so I'm going to go ahead and export it. We'll say it's going to ask me to name the file. You can have your code just generate a name, or if you want to have the same name and just overwrite your file every time you create a new one, that's okay as well. For me, I just want to make one, so I'm going to say the awesome checklist. And you can see it pop up here. The to-do list for today: get up, be awesome, Python, go bed. Right? So now it's going to ask us again, do we want to make another one? And just in case we had forgot to add something to this list, we could make another one. However, for me, I'm going to say no, and that'll close this program. So let's dissect what each process does. So process 1. This is really just going to determine one thing. How many items do we want on our list? And something you'll notice with me is that I like to break up every input into a completely separate function. But for this one, we're only going to use 2 variables. And we're going to use our, what we call the secret sauce. Slightly regretting that video name, but it's okay. We're going to use our secret sauce to validate that input. So how many items do they want on the list? We're going to store that. We're going to use it later. So we made it global. And if they input any other data type or something is wrong with their input, we're going to have an exception here for them. We're going to say error, and then we're going to tell them what the exception is. And also we're going to make sure validation stays true. So we run this again. Moving on to process 2. I'm once again very creative with my function names here. We're going to import the number of items that the user said they wanted to have. And now I'm going to make, well, this isn't technically making it, it's making it available, but I'm going to make an empty list that I can store all my values in for the items they want to add to their list. So I did this through a print and then an input. I said, please print your items in the order of importance, right? So that's not really an input. The input actually comes in here. And the reason I broke these up into a print and then an input is because they will have more than one, most likely, item to put on a list, right? Otherwise, it's not really a list. So if they're going to have more than one, I just want to loop that so that I'm not asking, right? So basically, for however many items they said they wanted, ask them the question that many times. So if they wanted 5 items, this loop right here is going to run 5 times. And if there's an input error, it's going to throw an exception and it'll stay on the same number. It's just going to keep going through. So process 3. Process 3 is just the function that makes it into a little list. And as you've seen, it puts it out in the terminal for them to see so that they can say, yeah, that is actually what I want. So we're going to use the list that we made. Remember, we're storing all of these values in this empty list up here, and we made it global so that we can access it down here. Let me collapse these as I'm done with them really quick. So we're able to access this list. Now we're going to order this list with numbers. So what I did for that is I just used a variation of my little validation loop, and I started at 1 and I looped it. So I said start at 1 and then add 1 every time you run this. So it's going to say 1, the first item they do, and then it's going to add 1 and it's going to say 2, the second item, right? And you get the picture. It's going to go on and on until we're out of items, and then it's going to be done. Now, if for some reason there shouldn't be, but if for some reason there's an error in this, or if you're trying to troubleshoot, I do have the redundant try except clause here just in case. That one should not come in handy. It should be just wasted space, but that's okay. So for process 4 and 5, these are not necessary for the actual listing part. Remember, we actually get the list to show in the terminal. For me, though, I like to have my list do something. I like to see them not in a terminal because the terminal can be ugly sometimes. So really, I just ask them, do you want to put it in a text file? And if they hit yes, if they input yes, then we're going to change the export to file variable to true, and we're going to move on. If they say no, then we're just going to, you'll see down here, but we're just going to say basically export denied, and we're going to move on with our code. Process 5 is where we actually do the exporting. So remember, we stored our yes or no in this export to file variable. So now we're going to say if export to file is a yes or a true, we're going to ask them to name the file first because you can't make a file with no name. And then we're going to write that file. We're going to create it here. Next, we're going to write a quick title. You don't have to have this. This is basically just this little bit right up here. You don't have to have it. Again, it kind of looks the same without it. I like it because it looks a little pretty, but you don't have to have that. Basically, all this is doing is naming, creating, and then writing a title. So for the content portion, we're actually going to use the same style of loop we've been using. I think we used it in process 3, right? For item and storing, we're going to just do that same loop basically, except for I'm going to add a line break because it kind of looks icky in a text file when it's all mashed up like that. So we're going to say the same logic, just 1 first item, 2 second item, right? But we're going to add a line break after each of those items. And then after we're going to close the file to save it. And then we have our redundant exception handling. Now remember, I did point out export denied. So that is if they say on the export to file variable, if they say, no, I don't want to export, then this variable will not be true. So it will go into the else clause and we will run this code. It will print that and move on. So that is basically the entirety of this code. Let me expand all these again so that we can do the copy paste follow along. I'm going to do one more quick scroll through for anybody who would like to copy some of this code out, steal some of the logic. I totally understand. It is here to be used. Knowledge should be free, right? So here's one final look at my code. And now let's run it one more time to make sure it's working fine. So we run it, we get our start function saying press enter to continue. Press enter, how many items? Remember, we can add as many as we want. I'm not going to do a number like 100, but we'll say 5. Please order them in importance. So I'm going to say, I'm going to say very, no, we'll say most important, very important, kinda important, not really important, and not important. Right? So number 1 is our most important thing. 2 is very important, but not most important. You get the picture. I'm not going to go on with that. I'm going to export it to a list. It's going to ask me to name it. Remember, this is just function 4 and 5. Would you like to export? Yes. Okay, if they do want to export, what would you like to name it? Right? So I'm going to name the file very, oh, no spaces. Name it very important. Alrighty, so we see our file pop up right here. Before I open that, I'm going to say make another list. No. So let's pop up and see our very important list. Looks good. Here's our to-do list for today, right? We have it ordered from most important to least important. And that is it. Really simple code. It's kind of long. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of redundant. But at the same time, this is something you can really expand on. So like if you're in college, let's say, I know a lot of colleges use Blackboard or Canva. If you're using either of those web apps, you can in fact use APIs and iframes to direct to assignments. You can say, hey, go web scrape this specific area of my courses and tell me what I have to do for this week. These could be really useful things. So hopefully you get some use out of this, and let me know what you think in the comments. Alrighty guys, that sums it up for me. So I just want to say a big thank you if you've made it to this point in the video, and let me know if there's anything I can do to improve my content in the future by leaving a comment below, thumbs up, thumbs down. Just let me know. And as always, happy coding.